Continuing on from the previous video, we are going to work problem 611A, which is just the same problem we were doing. It's problem 64A, but assume the company uses a perpetual inventory system. And we're only doing parts A through C. There's no part D. All right. Part A, now we're assuming company uses a perpetual inventory system. Everything else is the same numbers, the same given information. All right. Part A, again, what's ending inventory and what's cost of goods sold under the FIFO assumption? Well, the good thing is whether the company uses a perpetual inventory system or a periodic inventory system, when it comes to the FIFO assumption, the ending inventory dollar value and the cost of goods sold dollar value, you're going to get the same numbers. So we really don't have to do anything. Ending inventory is going to be $59,200. Cost of goods sold is going to be $59,600. So those numbers aren't going to change, whether they use a perpetual inventory system or a periodic inventory system. So A is essentially already done. What does change is the whenever you do the LIFO and the weighted average assumptions. So with LIFO assumption, what we want to do is we want to calculate cost of goods sold first. And they're using a perpetual inventory system, which means after every sale, they calculate the cost of those goods that were just sold. So after this first sale on February 2nd, we need to find what's the cost of these 400 goods that they sold. After the second sale on July 10th, what's the cost of these, I erased to 0. What's the cost of these 1,600 units that are sold? And then finally, after the third sale on October 23rd, what's the cost of these 800 units that are sold? And we add those three costs up at the very end to get the total cost of goods sold under the LIFO assumption. All right, so what's the cost of these 400 units that were sold on February 2nd, assuming LIFO from the standpoint of February 2nd? Last in was the first to leave. The only thing before the second are these. So these 400 that were sold on the second, they have to have come from these units. So the cost of these 400 units, 400 times 20. So the February 2nd cost of goods sold is just 400 units times $20 per unit. Or we add that up, or we multiply that out, that should be $8,000. Whoops. Next, we calculate. Now keep in mind, we've grabbed 400 units from beginning inventory, and there's 600 that are there that we assume haven't been sold yet. The next sale on July 10th, these 1,600 units, what's the cost of those goods that were sold? Again, we're assuming LIFO from the standpoint of July 10th. So last in were the first to leave. So these 1,600 that were sold on July 10th, we assume they came from these purchases on April 6th. Remember, there's still 600 from these beginning inventory we haven't sold by assumption, but we're not going to grab any of those because we're assuming LIFO from the standpoint of this date. And there's enough units right here to get these. So these 600 that were sold on July 10th are assumed to come from these purchases on April 6th. So the COGS of these units is 1,600 times 22. In the final sale, and keep in mind, we've grabbed 1,600 from these purchases, which leaves 200 from these purchases that we assume haven't been sold. So there's 600 here that haven't been sold. We need to keep track of that. There's 200 here that haven't been sold. I'll erase that later, but just keep a mental note of that. On October 23rd, they sold 800 units. We're assuming LIFO from the standpoint of the 23rd. Last in was the first to be sold. So which 800 units are these that were sold? We assume it was these units right here that were purchased on August 9th. And each of those 800 was purchased for $25. And those were all the sales they made. So we just add this up to get our total cost of goods sold under LIFO, under the LIFO assumption. Assuming they're using the perpetual inventory system. Maybe I should circle it to be consistent. So $63,200. Let me check and make sure that. Yeah. Next, we calculate the ending inventory dollar value. Under the LIFO assumption. There's 2,200 units left in ending inventory. Where do these units come from? Well, remember the 600 from the beginning we never used? So 600 of these 2,200 units left at the end are from the beginning inventory. 200 of the 2,200 left at the end are from these purchases. We had already grabbed all of these purchases. And then the other 1,400 are assumed to be these purchases. So ending inventory should be valued at 600 times 20 plus 200 times 22 plus 1,400 times 28. Add all that up. $55,600. Notice the LIFO numbers for COGS and ending inventory, if the company uses a perpetual inventory system, are different than the LIFO numbers for COGS and ending inventory if the company uses a periodic inventory system. They're not the same numbers because the way we calculate it was different. Make sure you understand the differences between perpetual LIFO and periodic LIFO. Go back and watch the other video. Make sure you see the difference in the calculations. Moving on to the weighted average method. This weighted average method, I'm going to go ahead and start it on a new page because we're going to need more space. Perpetual weighted average periodic weighted average, first thing we did was calculate the weighted average cost per unit. Perpetual weighted average, you have to calculate a weighted average cost per unit every time they make a purchase. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3 weighted average costs per unit. There's going to be one on April 6th. That's the first one. And then every time they make a purchase, you have to update the weighted average cost per unit. As of April 6th, what's the weighted average cost per unit? It's just the cost of goods available for sale as of that date. divided by the number of units available for sale. So 1,000 times 20 plus 1,800 times 22 divided by 1,000 plus 1,800. Let me think about that. Because we did sell 400 right here. Make sure that I'm saying that right. No, I think that is not right. As of April 6th, we have only 600 of these units are left. 400 have been sold. So 600 times 20 plus 1,800 times 22. That's the cost of goods available for sale. Divided by the units available for sale as of this date. Well, there's 600 from beginning, and then there's the 1,800 that were purchased. The weighted average cost per unit. $51,600 divided by 2,400 units. $21.50 per unit. I believe that's right. Yeah. Next, we have to calculate the weighted average cost per unit the next time they make a purchase, which is on August 9th. So what's the August 9th weighted average cost per unit? Or the weighted average cost per unit as of August 9th. Again, it's the cost of goods available for sale as of that date divided by the number of units available for sale. The only thing is we've had a sale occur between April 6th and August 9th. We had this sale. So as of April 6th, we have 600 from here, and we have 2,400 units available for sale. Then on July 10th, we sell 1,600 of them. So there's 800 left. So these 800 that are left, we assume that, what do we assume we paid for those units? What's the cost we paid? This. Then we purchased some units on August 9th, 800 units at $25 each. So as of August 9th, there are 1,600 units available for sale. Let's walk through that again. As of this date, there's 1,600 units available for sale, right? We had 1,000, we sold 400, so there's only 600 left. Then we purchased 1,800, so we have 2,400. Then we sell 1,600, so there's 800 left to sell. Then we purchased 800, so now we have 1,600. 800 were purchased at 25, and the 800 that were left over that hadn't been sold were purchased for either 20 or 22, but the weighted average, what we assumed that those 800 were purchased for, was, we used this 21.5. That's where students mess up. They would put like a 22, the $22 right here. But you got to put this. This is the weighted average cost that's attached to all these units. Doing this calculation gives us $37,200 in the numerator. Of course, 1,600 units in the denominator. So the weighted average cost per unit as of August 9th, $23.25. And then finally, December 30th, we need to calculate the weighted average cost per unit as of December 30th. Let's see what happened between August 9th and December 30th. As of August 9th, we have 1,600 units available for sale. Then we sell 800 units on October 23rd. So now we have 800 units available for sale. These 800 units have a weighted average cost per unit attached to them of $23.25 per unit. Then on December 30th, we purchased 1,400 units at $28 a unit. So our cost of goods available for sale as of December 30th is this. And the number of units available for sale, of course, 800 plus 1,400, 2,200. Doing a little math. $57,800 here in the numerator, divided by 2,200 units, gives the weighted average cost per unit of $26.27 if you round to the nearest two decimal places. Alright, now once we have these three weighted average costs per unit, one as of each purchase date, then we can calculate the dollar value in ending inventory and the dollar value of cost of goods sold. The dollar value of ending inventory, how many units are left at the end? There's 2,200 units left at the end. And what dollar value are we going to assign to those units? We're going to assume each of these units we purchased for, we're going to use the most recent weighted average cost per unit. So the one that was calculated on December 30th. We're going to assume each of those 2,200 units was purchased for this per unit. So we use the most recent weighted average cost per unit. So perpetual weighted average would assign this dollar value to ending inventory. 57,794. And for cost of goods sold, we have to do it in stages. We have to find the cost of goods sold. Let me erase this. We have to find the cost of goods sold of this sale, of this sale, of this sale. So the February 2nd cost of goods sold, which weighted average cost per unit are we going to use? This, or this? Well, as of February 2nd, we're going to use the most recent one, the one closest to February 2nd. Well, we can't use the April 6th because that's after February 2nd. So we'll just use the 20. These 400 units that were sold on February 2nd are assumed to have cost us $20. Yikes, what's this? So $8,000. Then we need to calculate the cost of goods sold of these 1,600 units on July 10th. We're going to use the most recent, from the standpoint of July 10th, the most recent weighted average cost per unit. We're going to use the one on April 6th. So we're going to use the July 10th COGS is the 1,600 units that are sold times, we're going to assume each of those units cost us this much to buy. It's $34,400. And then finally, the October 23rd cost of goods sold. That was our last sale. We sold 800 units. We're going to assume each of those was purchased for whatever the weighted average cost per unit that we calculated as of August 9th. We won't use the 1230 weighted average cost per unit because as of October 23rd, 1230 hasn't happened yet. We're going to be using this August 9th. We're going to be using this one. So in fact, we never actually use this number in our cost of goods sold calculation. We use it in ending inventory, but not in cost of goods sold. $23.25 per unit times the 800 units that we sold on October 23rd. We assume this is what it costs us to buy each of those units. $18,600. And now we add up the cost of goods sold that we've calculated. $8,000, $34,400, and $18,600. You get $61,000. It's the weighted average cost of goods sold. So hopefully you followed this video and you can go have a look at the calculations again and make sure you know exactly how to do LIFO, perpetual LIFO, and perpetual weighted average method to estimate dollar value of ending inventory and dollar value of cost of goods sold.